Imagine this. It's 1881, deep in the untamed Montana territory. A lone man stands against a howling blizzard, his crazy invention defying nature's wrath. Neighbors laugh, calling him a fool destined to freeze. But when the storm hits hardest, his wild idea doesn't just survive, it thrives, silencing every doubter in its path. What if I told you this true story holds the key to unlocking your own unbreakable resilience? Stick around, because in the next 30 minutes, we'll uncover how one man's insane cabin changed everything, and how you can build your own fortress against life's fiercest storms. Get ready to be inspired. This tale will light a fire in your soul that no winter can extinguish. Ladies and gentlemen, dreamers and doers, trailblazers, and those who've ever felt the sting of doubt, pull up a chair by this imaginary campfire, because we're about to embark on an epic journey through time, hardship, and ultimate triumph that will leave you motivated to tackle your own challenges head-on. This isn't just any story. It's the gripping saga of Garrett Moy, a man whose name might not echo through grand history books like those of presidents or inventors with patents galore, but whose indomitable spirit resonates in every act of bold, everyday innovation that defies the odds. Born in 1840 amid the misty, windswept highlands of Scotland, Garrett's early life was nothing short of a forge hammering out unyielding resilience from the raw ore of adversity. Picture a young boy with freckled cheeks, wide curious eyes, and a mop of unruly red hair, standing amidst the desolate fields where the great potato famine ravaged everything in its path. Hunger gnawed relentlessly at their bellies. Disease stalked the villages like a shadow, claiming neighbors and friends without mercy. And the very land that had sustained generations seemed to turn against them in betrayal. In 1847, at the tender age of 7, Garrett and his family made the harrowing decision to flee, boarding a creaking wooden ship bound for the distant shores of America. The Atlantic crossing was a nightmare of towering waves crashing like thunderous applause from angry gods, seasickness turning stomachs inside out, and the constant fear of never seeing land again. They arrived in New York Harbor, penniless, disoriented, but alive, only to plunge into the smoky, grimy underbelly of industrial factories in the bustling north. His parents slaved away in dimly lit textile mills, their fingers raw and bleeding from the relentless looms, while young Garrett scavenged the crowded streets for scraps of food, odd jobs, or anything to contribute to their survival. Yet, even in those dark days, a fierce fire burned within him, a deep-seated refusal to be broken by circumstance, a vow whispered to the stars. One day, I'll build something that lasts, something no famine or factory can touch. By his teenage years, Garrett had fled the suffocating city grime for the vast, wild woods of Michigan's Upper Peninsula, joining the rough-and-tumble timber camps where men as tough as the ancient oaks they felled lived by the sweat of their brows and the strength of their backs. Imagine the immersive scene: dense, primordial forests stretching endlessly under a canopy so thick it blocked out the sun, the air heavy with the sharp, invigorating scent of fresh pine resin and damp earth, punctuated by the rhythmic, echoing thud of axes biting into wood. Summers brought sweltering heat that made shirts cling like second skins, swarms of mosquitoes buzzing like plagues from biblical tales. Winters delivered snowdrifts that swallowed trails whole, forcing men to dig out just to reach the next tree. Garrett learned his craft the hard way: how to notch a log with precision for a perfect fit, how to read the subtle grain of wood to predict its strength, how to survive when an unexpected avalanche roared down a forested slope like a white tidal wave. He witnessed tragedies that would break lesser souls. Comrades crushed beneath falling giants, their screams echoing through misty valleys, bodies pulled from raging rivers swollen with spring melt. But each scar, each loss, hardened him like tempered steel. Around crackling campfires at night, with flames flickering shadows on bearded, weathered faces, he'd share wisdom gleaned from the wild. "Nature don't bend to our wishes," he'd say in his thick Scots brogue. but she sure as hell respects the clever ones who learn her ways. Through his 20s and 30s, Garrett wandered ever westward, across the windswept prairies of the Dakotas where grass whispered secrets and buffalo thundered like distant storms, through the arid badlands of Wyoming, baked under a relentless sun that cracked the earth like old leather, and finally into the majestic, jagged peaks of the Rocky Mountains that pierced the sky like nature's own cathedral. By the age of 41 in 1881, Garrett had become a master carpenter, his hands an intricate map of calluses, scars, and stories, his eyes as sharp and piercing as an eagle's scanning for prey. He'd scrimped and saved every hard-earned penny from those grueling camps to stake his claim on a 160-acre homestead in Montana's Bitterroot Valley, a pristine slice of paradise wrapped in layers of untamed peril. Towering mountains framed the land like silent guardians, crystal-clear rivers teemed with silver-flashing trout, and lush meadows burst with vibrant wildflowers in summer. But this beauty masked a deadly undercurrent. The winters here were legendary beasts, capable of burying men alive under avalanches of snow, freezing rivers solid, and testing the very limits of human endurance. Arriving on his claim in late September, Garrett unhitched his sturdy oxen from the wagon under a vast sky, already bruised with the chill hues of approaching autumn. The aspens shimmered in brilliant gold and crimson, their leaves rustling like whispered warnings from the wind, signaling that frost would soon grip the valley in its icy fist. His supplies were Spartan but essential, a collection of well-worn axes, adzes for shaping wood, heavy mallets for pounding, crosscut saws for felling, and a smattering of hand-forged nails. The nearest trading post lay a grueling, full day's ride over rugged, twisting trails dotted with boulders and streams, and with the high mountain passes threatening to close under early snows, time became his most precious and unforgiving enemy. He estimated perhaps 6 short weeks before the world turned white and impassable, isolating him completely. The abundant timber surrounding his site consisted of straight, tall lodgepole pines, perfect for building, but they were green as fresh spring grass, dripping with sticky sap and utterly unseasoned. Properly dried wood requires months to cure, allowing moisture to evaporate slowly to prevent warping, cracking, and inefficient heat retention. Green logs, by contrast, would burn smoky and inefficiently in a stove, create fires that demanded constant tending, and allow precious heat to escape through every tiny seam like water leaking from a cracked bucket. The scattered neighbors, hardy settlers who'd carved out their own existences from this wild land, gathered at his site out of curiosity at first, offering advice born from their own bitter experiences. Old Jeb Harlan, a grizzled veteran with a tobacco-stained beard and eyes squinting from years under harsh sun, leaned casually on his split-rail fence and drawled, "Son, that green wood's a downright curse on any builder. Best you build quick and keep it simple. One good thick wall, chink it up tight with mud, moss, and..." Others nodded sagely, sharing harrowing tales of cabins that had failed spectacularly. Roofs caving in under the crushing weight of accumulated snow, walls buckling and splitting from trapped moisture, entire families forced to abandon their homes and trek through blizzards to town just to survive the season. But Garrett's inventive mind was already churning like a mill wheel in a swift stream, refusing to accept the conventional wisdom that boxed in lesser men. One particularly crisp evening, as the sun dipped slowly behind the jagged peaks, painting the sky in a spectacular array of fiery oranges, deep purples, and lingering golds, he sat hunkered by his modest campfire, the flames crackling softly and sending sparks dancing upward like fireflies into the twilight. To protect his precious tools from the night's gathering dew and frost, he bundled them tightly in a heavy canvas tarp, tying it secure with rough hemp rope. Come the chilly dawn, when frost glittered like diamonds on every blade of grass and leaf, those wrapped tools felt noticeably warmer to the touch than the frozen ground around them. Why on earth? The answer struck him like a lightning bolt. The canvas had trapped a thin layer of still, motionless air around the tools, acting as an invisible blanket that resisted the cold's insidious infiltration. A brilliant spark ignited in his brain, not unlike the embers glowing before him in the fire pit. What if he could scale this simple principle up to an entire structure? What if, instead of building a traditional single-wall cabin, he constructed two parallel walls, an inner sanctum designed for comfortable living, surrounded by an outer protective shell, with a deliberate 18-inch void of dead, stagnant air sandwiched in between? It was a revolutionary concept, one that flew in the face of every established building tradition on the frontier. Double the number of logs required? Double the back-breaking labor involved? All for the same amount of interior living space? Utter madness. Word of his audacious plan rippled through the valley like a fast-moving mountain stream after a heavy rain, carrying with it waves of skepticism and outright ridicule. At the local saloon, a rough-hewn plank building illuminated by flickering kerosene lamps and filled with the haze of pipe smoke, men gathered around pot-bellied stoves, guffawing over tin mugs of harsh whiskey. "That Moy feller's plumb lost his mind," one burly logger bellowed, slapping his knee. "Building what he calls a double cabin? More like a double waste of good timber." They nicknamed it Moy's Monstrosity, the Airhead House, or the Doubtful Dwelling. Even the womenfolk at their communal quilting bees clucked their tongues in pity. Poor misguided soul will freeze solid come the first real blow, mark my words. Then there was Caulfield, the valley's self-appointed building expert, a wiry man in his 50s who'd erected everything from humble sod huts on the plains to sturdy log barns for livestock. He rode up to Garrett's site one afternoon on his sway-backed mule, dismounted with a grunt, and spat a stream of tobacco juice into the dusty dirt. "Listen here, Scotsman," he began in a gravelly voice laced with condescension. "I've seen greenhorns like you come and go faster than a spring thaw. Air don't hold a candle to real heat. It's mass that does the job. Thick, solid logs stacked tight, stone foundations to anchor it all. That's the proven ticket to surviving out here. Your fancy gap between walls. It'll trap every bit of damp from the ground, breed mold like a swamp, and The gathered onlookers erupted in laughter that stung Garrett like a swarm of angry bees. In quieter moments, as he lay in his temporary canvas tent at night, with the wind flapping the fabric like ghostly hands, doubt crept in like the chill seeping through seams. Am I truly crazy for this? Should I abandon the idea and play it safe like everyone else? But then memories would flood back in a rush. Those timber camps where quick-thinking innovation had saved lives time and again, like rigging clever pulleys to lift impossibly heavy loads or insulating makeshift tents with layers of evergreen boughs to ward off frostbite. No, he decided firmly. He'd trust his instincts over the crowd's chorus. Conformity's the real killer out here. It'll freeze a man solid long before the snow does, he'd mutter to himself, rising at first light with a renewed burning fire in his belly. With the relentless clock ticking down, leaves falling faster each day, mornings growing crisper with hints of ice in the air, Garrett launched into the monumental build with the determination of a man possessed. Let's walk through it week by painstaking week, immersing ourselves in the sweat, the struggle, and the sheer willpower that drove him forward. Week 1. Clearing the site. His broad axe sang through the crisp air with each swing, thudding deeply into the pines that toppled with resounding groans and crashes, shaking the ground. Sticky sap coated his hands like glue. Blisters bubbled up on his palms like painful badges of honor. But he pressed on undeterred, harnessing his oxen to drag the felled logs into neat, organized stacks. Neighbors rode by on horseback, smirking from under wide-brimmed hats. Look at the fool, chopping twice the timber he needs for that harebrained scheme. Week 2. Assembling the inner wall. Using logs of 8-inch diameter, peeled smooth to remove bark and prevent pests, he notched the ends precisely for dovetail fits, interlocking corners as secure as a well-made puzzle. He chinked every seam meticulously with soft moss gathered from shady stream banks, mixed with sticky clay dug from the rich valley soil, and strands of coarse horsehair for added binding strength. This inner wall formed the heart of the structure, the load-bearing core that would support the roof and enclose a modest 16 by 20-foot living space, room enough for a simple bedroll, a rough-hewn table for meals, and shelves to store provisions against the long isolation. Week 3. Erecting the outer wall, positioned exactly 18 inches distant from the inner one, rising in parallel like a faithful shadow. These logs were hewn rougher, without the need for flawless precision, as their role was purely protective, to stand as unyielding sentinels against the elements. He connected the two walls with occasional wooden ties spaced every few feet, careful not to create thermal bridges that would defeat the air gap's purpose, and set sturdy stone piers at the bases for unwavering stability, backfilling with tightly packed earth to prevent any shifting underload. The void between them? A sacred expanse of emptiness, a deliberate buffer zone where the air would remain stagnant, effectively halting the rapid loss of heat through convection or conduction. A young ranch hand, barely out of his teens with a face full of freckles, stopped by one day out of pure curiosity. "What's the point of all this extra work, mister?" Garrett paused, wiping sweat from his brow, and explained patiently. "It's like wearing 2 layers of coats in a storm. The outer one takes the brunt of the wind and wet, while the inner one keeps your body nice and warm." The boy shrugged his shoulders, clearly unconvinced, and rode off shaking his head. Week 4. Installing the roof. He chose a steep single pitch at 45 degrees to efficiently slough off heavy snow accumulations that could weigh literal tons, preventing collapse. Thick beams spanned across both walls for support, topped with overlapping bark slab shingles, layered thick like scales on a fish. The eaves were extended wide on all sides, providing shelter to the walls below, and preventing drifts from piling directly against the precious air gap. Doors and windows were doubled as well, with 18-inch vestibules acting like mini hallways or airlocks to trap any invading cold blasts before they could reach the interior. Week 5. Constructing the centerpiece hearth. From smooth, rounded river stones hauled laboriously in a wooden sled pulled by his faithful oxen, he mortared together a massive chimney and fireplace ensemble designed to span the air gap so that heat could radiate efficiently to both sides, but primarily inward to the living space. This hearth served as a natural heat battery, absorbing the fire's intense energy during the day and releasing it slowly, steadily through the night like a sun-warmed boulder cooling under stars. Beneath the floorboards, additional stone piers lifted the entire structure 6 inches off the perpetually frozen ground, creating yet another insulating pocket of dead air to combat the upward creep of Earth's relentless chill. Sweat poured down his face in rivulets. His back ached with a deep, persistent throb, but the visible progress fueled his spirit like dry kindling to a flame. Week 6. The final touches that transformed it from structure to sanctuary. More chinking to seal any overlooked gaps, oiling the exposed wood surfaces with linseed to protect against weathering and rot, and stocking a substantial wood pile of split green logs neatly arranged under a makeshift lean-to. As the first light snowflakes began to swirl lazily from the graying sky like confetti from some celestial celebration, Garrett stepped across the threshold into his creation for the first time. He kindled the inaugural fire in the hearth, dry tinder catching quickly, flames leaping upward with eager pops and crackles, smoke drawing cleanly up the wide chimney. Warmth began to spread, tentative at first like a shy dawn, then enveloping the space in a comforting embrace. The inner room heated rapidly, but the true magic unfolded in that engineered gap. Outgoing heat waves hit the still air and slowed dramatically, like wading through thick molasses in January's depths. "It works," he whispered to the empty room, a broad grin cracking his weathered, sunburned face as he collapsed onto his simple bedroll with a sigh of weary satisfaction. But oh, my inspired friends, the real drama, the heart-pounding climax of this tale, unfolded with the merciless arrival of winter, the infamous, bone-chilling freeze of 1881-82. Forever etched in the annals of Montana frontier lore, as the big die-up for the toll it took on man and beast alike. November teased the valley with light, powdery snows that blanketed everything in a serene, pristine white, lulling settlers into a false sense of complacency as they stocked their larders and mended their gear. Then December roared in like a furious lion awakened from slumber. Temperatures nosedived precipitously, first to 20° F, then plunging deeper to 30, and finally bottoming out at a staggering 40 for an unrelenting stretch of 11 endless, torturous days. Winds gusted ferociously to 40 miles per hour, whipping loose snow into blinding, impenetrable walls of whiteout that reduced visibility to mere feet. Rivers froze solid as stone, their surfaces cracking with explosive reports in the extreme cold. Trees themselves splintered like gunfire as sap expanded and burst their trunks. Single-wall cabins, the standard of the day, transformed into miserable ice prisons. Interior walls frosted over with thick layers of hoarfrost, condensation dripping constantly from ceilings like indoor rain, breath visible in thick clouds even indoors. Families were forced to burn wood incessantly to stave off hypothermia. 8, 10, even 12 massive logs a day, venturing out into the blinding blizzards to chop more, their axes slipping on numb, frost-bitten fingers. Exhaustion bred rampant illness. Pneumonia and frostbite claimed the weak and unwary. Livestock huddled pitifully in uninsulated sheds, many starving as hay supplies dwindled under the prolonged siege, their lowing cries a haunting soundtrack to the misery. Desperation mounted to breaking points. Some families abandoned their homesteads entirely, strapping on crude snowshoes for the perilous trek to distant towns, leaving behind dreams and possessions buried under drifts. Yet in Garrett's innovative double cabin, an entirely different world unfolded, a veritable haven of warmth and efficiency amidst the chaos. Crude thermometer readings, improvised from mercury tubes, showed steady interior temperatures, hovering around 52° F, even as the outside world plummeted to a deadly 44. He fed the hungry hearth modestly. Just 4 or 5 logs in the morning, and again in the evening, each carefully selected batch simmering contentedly for 6 to 8 hours without needing constant attention. Why this seeming miracle in the face of nature's wrath? It was science at its simplest and most profound, harnessed through clever design. The inner wall absorbed radiant heat from the hearth's glowing stones, which soaked it up like thirsty sponges during active burns. But to escape outward, that precious warmth had to cross the engineered air gap, where the molecules of still air barely stirred, crippling the convective currents that would otherwise whisk heat away rapidly. Conduction through such stagnant air was equally poor. Ferocious winds battered and howled against the outer shell like wolves at the door, but they couldn't penetrate directly to the interior. No sneaky drafts whistled through the meticulously sealed seams. Moisture from breathing or cooking vented naturally without pooling to cause rot or ice buildup. Overnight, Garrett would bank the coals under a thick layer of ash. Come morning, a quick poke with an iron rod revived the flames in mere minutes, and the room never dipped below a survivable 40° F. He slept soundly through the nights, rose refreshed and energized, and even found time for small luxuries like reading tattered books by the soft glow of a lantern, or whittling useful tools from scraps of wood. His substantial woodpile shrank at half the rate of his neighbors, allowing him to conserve energy for other tasks. And his oxen remained fat and healthy on the spared hay that would have otherwise been burned for futile warmth. Whispers of his success began to spread through the valley like smoke signals on a clear day, turning initial skepticism into outright wonder. First to arrive was old Jeb Harlan, trudging determinedly through waist-deep snowdrifts with his coat collar turned up against the biting wind, knocking sheepishly on Garrett's sturdy door. "Garrett? Mind if I come in and warm my old bones for a spell?" Inside, Jeb's jaw dropped in astonishment at the cozy, glowing interior, the steady warmth, the lack of frost on walls, the efficient fire burning low but effective. "How in the blazes are you managing this?" Garrett demonstrated patiently, gesturing to the walls. "See here, Jeb, it's the trapped air between that's doing the fighting for us, keeps the heat locked in tight and the cold locked out." Jeb left humbled, His face flushed not just from the heat but from revelation, and he spread the word far and wide. Then came Caulfield, his once swollen ego deflated like a punctured balloon after days of shivering in his own proven cabin. "I was a dang fool to mock ya," he admitted gruffly, hat in hand. "Show me your secrets, Moy." More followed in a steady stream. Widows with shivering children, bundled in threadbare blankets, young couples on the brink of despair, all seeking refuge and knowledge. Garrett shared freely and without judgment. Bowls of hot hearty stew simmered on the stove, spare wool blankets to wrap around chilled shoulders, even helping hands to chop extra wood for their depleted piles. Nature herself had delivered the final, unequivocal verdict. Her icy, unyielding grip had silenced the mockers once and for all, elevating Garrett's crazy invention to the status of frontier canon. By the time the storm finally relented, as the sun peeked through thinning clouds and meltwater began to drip like tears of relief from icicles, the entire valley buzzed with awe and admiration for the man who'd outsmarted winter. As spring's thaw swept through the land like a gentle sigh, rivers swelling with crystal meltwater, meadows erupting in a riot of colorful flowers, and birdsong filling the crisp air with melodies of renewal, Garrett's double cabin stood pristine and unyielding. No unsightly warping from the greenwood, thanks to the gap allowing gradual, controlled drying. No insidious rot. Proper ventilation. He thrived in the warmer months, plowing fertile fields with his oxen, sowing seeds of wheat, potatoes, and hardy vegetables, hunting majestic elk in the awakening forests where new growth pushed through the soil. Word of his groundbreaking ingenuity galloped beyond the confines of the Bitterroot Valley. Trail riders carried tales to bustling towns like Missoula and Helena, even across territorial lines to eager ears in Idaho and Wyoming. By 1885, no fewer than 19 adaptations had sprouted within a 40-mile radius, full-fledged double cabins for ambitious new settlers, clever hybrid additions to existing homes, such as outer skirts added to barns for livestock protection, and insulated root cellars that preserved bountiful harvests through unpredictable frosts and thaws. One particularly inventive farmer lined his chicken coop with a similar air gap, boosting egg production dramatically during lingering cold snaps by keeping the birds comfortable. Another constructed a specialized smokehouse variant, curing meats more efficiently with less fuel and even heat distribution. Garrett didn't seek to patent his idea or profit from it like some city slicker. He taught openly at community gatherings, sketching detailed plans on scraps of bark or paper, embodying the generous communal spirit that defined the true frontier ethos. To truly humanize our hero and bring him to life beyond the legend, let's linger a moment on his personal world, the intimate details that made Garrett Moy more than just a builder. He was flesh and blood, with a heart full of yearnings, fears, and joys. He wasn't some stoic statue carved from granite. He had vulnerabilities that made his triumphs all the more inspiring. Sporadic letters from distant Scotland arrived via slow pony express, bearing news of scattered siblings and extended family, evoking sharp pangs of loneliness that twisted like a knife in quiet evenings. In the cabin's hushed interior, he'd often strum a battered old fiddle brought from the old country, its strings singing melancholic highland reels that chased away the shadows of isolation, transporting him back to misty moors and family hearths long lost. Then, in the summer of 1882, fate smiled upon him when he met Eliza Thorne, a spirited young schoolteacher with cascading auburn curls, sparkling green eyes, and a laugh that tinkled like silver bells on a sleigh. She had ridden into the valley on a sturdy mare to educate the scattered ranch children, boarding with various families and bringing light to their rudimentary lessons. Garrett courted her gently and earnestly, romantic picnics by the babbling river with baskets of fresh-caught trout and wild berries, bouquets of vibrant wildflowers picked at dawn, evenings sharing stories of his adventurous builds under starlit skies. They wed in 1883 beneath a grove of blooming aspens, her in a simple calico dress sewn by hand, him in his best flannel shirt starched stiff, surrounded by neighbors who'd come to celebrate the man they'd once doubted. The double cabin blossomed into a true home under Eliza's touch. Lace curtains fashioned from old flour sacks fluttering in breezes, a thriving herb garden outside the door, scenting the air with sage and mint, homemade pies baking in the efficient hearth, filling the space with mouth-watering aromas. Children soon blessed their union. 2 rambunctious boys with their father's red hair and determination, and a sweet girl with her mother's gentle eyes, growing up safe and warm within those innovative walls, listening wide-eyed to bedtime tales of Papa's miracle cabin. "See here, my little ones," he'd say softly as he tucked them under quilts. "Doubt's just like the wind outside. It howls and blusters. But if you build strong..." The enduring power of this story, the reason it ignites motivation in our hearts even today, lies in its timeless lessons, expanded here into 19 concrete steps of triumph, a practical motivational blueprint you can apply to your own life right now. Let's unpack each one deeply, weaving in inspiration to fuel your fire. Step 1. Arrive with vision. Garrett staked his homestead claim with a clear, purposeful dream in mind. You too must envision your goals vividly. Write them down, visualize them in detail. Feel the excitement as if they're already yours. Step 2. Assess challenges head-on without flinching. He confronted the realities of limited time, unseasoned green wood, and isolation squarely. Catalog your own obstacles honestly, but view them not as barriers, but as opportunities to shine through clever solutions. Step 3. Observe nature keenly for hidden clues. That simple tool bundle wrapped in canvas sparked his groundbreaking insight. Train yourself to scan your everyday surroundings for those aha moments, whether it's an overlooked habit, a chance conversation, or a natural phenomenon that holds the key. Step 4. Ideate boldly, unbound by convention. The double wall concept defied all norms. Seeming wild at first, give yourself permission to brainstorm without limits. No idea too outlandish in the initial creative surge. Step 5. Ignore critics gracefully, without bitterness. The valley's laughter and jeers didn't deter him one bit. Surround yourself with positive influences. Let negativity roll off like water on oiled canvas, and use it as fuel to prove them wrong. Step 6. Plan meticulously, leaving nothing to chance. Garrett sketched his designs in the dirt with a stick, outlining every detail. Map out your path with clear timelines, required resources, and backup contingencies to navigate uncertainties. Step 7. Execute relentlessly, day after grueling day. His axe never idled, even when exhaustion clawed at him. Commit to consistent, daily action on your goals, even when motivation wanes. It's the accumulation that builds empires. Step 8. Refine as you go, adapting fluidly to new information. Mid-build tweaks improve the cabin's stability and function. Stay flexible in your pursuits. Iterate based on real-time feedback and lessons learned along the way. Step 9. Test in small ways early to validate. The first experimental fire proved the air gap's effectiveness. Prototype your big dreams through small, low-risk pilots to minimize potential failures and build confidence. Step 10. Move in with unshakable faith in your vision. Garrett trusted his creation despite the whispers of doubt. When the time comes, leap fully into commitment, believing deeply in your preparation and instincts. Step 11. Endure the storm stoically, head held high. The brutal winter's fury tested every fiber of his being. Brace yourself for inevitable setbacks and trials, knowing they are temporary, and that perseverance turns them into stepping stones. Step 12. Measure success objectively to track progress. The warmer temperatures and saved fuel were tangible proofs. Establish clear metrics for your endeavors. Celebrate each milestone, no matter how small, to maintain momentum. Step 13. Share wisdom generously with those around you. Garrett taught his neighbors without hesitation or expectation of return. Become a mentor in your field, multiplying your impact by lifting others up alongside you.